So, let's just jump right in. Have you ever been so head over heels in love, or, on the flip side, so completely heartbroken that you wonder, is this feeling even something I can control? Is that idea of forever something that's actually, I don't know, written into our DNA?
To really get a grip on the power of love, sometimes you have to start with the pain of losing it. This quote, wow, it just nails that physical, all-consuming feeling of a breakup. And that one word she uses, addicted. Well, it turns out that's way more accurate than you might think.
And that feeling, that craving, it really brings us to the core question of this whole explainer. Could it be that love is just a really powerful, really addictive drug that our own brain cooks up? A chemical high that sooner or later is just bound to fade.
To figure that out, we've got to look under the hood. We need to look at the neurochemistry of it all. So let's break down your brain's very own love cocktail and see exactly what it's made of.
And this isn't just a metaphor. Scientists can actually see this happening. When they put people who are madly in love into fMRI machines, their brains light up. And the fascinating part, the areas that light up belong to the exact same reward system that gets activated by addictive drugs.
So ingredient number one in this cocktail is dopamine. You can think of this as the engine of desire. It's the stuff that gives you that incredible rush, that boundless energy, and that laser-like focus on winning over that one special person. Dopamine is the craving.
Okay, but a craving can't last forever, right? To build something real, you need the next ingredient, oxytocin. People call it the cuddle hormone, and for good reason. It's what helps take all that frantic, dopamine-fueled energy and transform it into a calm, warm feeling of trust and genuine attachment.
And then, to make it stick for the long haul, our brain adds vasopressin to the mix. This is basically the commitment agent. In fact, in studies of animals like prairie voles, which are famously monogamous, this hormone is directly tied to forming that lasting bond, and even that protective, stay away from my partner instinct.
So you've got oxytocin and vasopressin, and while they might have slightly different jobs, you can think of them as a team. They work together to build the chemical foundation that helps turn that initial, crazy attraction into a stable, long-term bond.
All right, so we've got a chemical recipe for connection. That makes sense, but it doesn't explain who we fall for, does it? Why does one person set off this whole chemical cascade while another person does absolutely nothing for us? Well, this is where our biology meets our biography.
So let's talk about that biography. We're going to dive into the echoes of our childhood, what you could call the ghost in the machine that quietly influences who we love as adults.
And one of the biggest ideas here is something called attachment theory. The basic idea is that our biological hardware, our brain, runs on a kind of psychological software that gets written when we're very, very young. Our first relationships with our caregivers create a blueprint, an internal model for how we expect love to work for the rest of our lives. And this software comes in a few different versions. If you have a secure attachment style, you probably find it pretty easy to form close, healthy bonds. But other styles can create some real challenges. An anxious style might create this constant fear of abandonment, while an avoidance style might make you push intimacy away, even if it's what you really want.
And it gets even more interesting. There's another idea called imago theory, which suggests we take this a step further. We're often unconsciously drawn to partners who remind us of our caregivers, and that includes not just their good traits, but their negative ones too. The idea is that we're trying, as adults, to finally heal those old childhood wounds.
Man, this is all getting pretty complicated, isn't it? It actually led a lot of scientists to wonder if there wasn't some kind of simpler biological shortcut. Like a genetic lock and key that could help us find our perfect match.
And one of the most exciting theories for a long time was the major histocompatibility complex, or MHC. The idea was just so elegant. Maybe we're subconsciously attracted to the scent of people who have very different immune system genes from us. That way, our kids would get the best of both worlds and have a supercharged defense against diseases.
It's a fantastic theory. You might have even heard of those famous sweaty t-shirt studies where they tested it. But to get a real final answer, researchers did something huge, a massive meta-analysis, where they combined all the data from dozens of separate studies on everything from smell preferences to the actual genes of thousands of couples.
So after all that work, after pooling all that data from all those studies, what did they find? Well, the result was not statistically significant. Turns out there's no consistent overall proof that we humans systematically pick our partners based on their immune system genes. Now that might sound like a failure, But it's actually a really profound discovery. What it tells us is that human love is just too messy, too complex, and way too personal to be boiled down to some simple biological code. It's just not that easy.
So if love isn't just one thing, if it's not just chemicals, not just our childhood, and not just our genes, then what in the world is it? Well, that brings us to our final section, where we try to put all of these pieces together.
To really get this, we need a cool concept from science called emergentism. The idea is actually pretty simple, but so powerful. It's that when you combine a bunch of individual parts, you can create something completely new, with properties that none of the individual parts had on their own. The whole really is greater than the sum of its parts.
And this brings us right to the heart of our entire explainer. As Dr. Krishna Sheshadri puts it so perfectly, love itself is an emergent property. Think about that. Love isn't in the chemicals. Love emerges from the incredibly complex dance between all the parts of the system.
So let's look at that system. Love emerges from the interaction of everything we've talked about. That initial dopamine rush, that deep drive to bond from oxytocin and vasopressin, the psychological software installed in our childhood, a whole web of other biological signals, and this is the really critical one, our conscious choices.
Which really leaves us with this one last thought to chew on. If our biology doesn't hand us a guarantee for forever, and if there's no simple genetic key to unlock eternal love, maybe the most powerful ingredient in that whole cocktail isn't something we just find. Maybe it's something we choose to build day after day.